What's up, guys, and welcome back to Math with McKay. All right, we are in our student workbooks on page 157. We are coming out of lesson 15. What we've been dealing with was equivalent ratios, ratio tables, unit rates, and things of that sort. All right, so a ratio, remember, is a comparison of two or more things, right? What is it that you're actually comparing is what you want to focus on. Are we talking about cats and dogs? Are we talking about money compared to ounces? Just things of that sort. So we're going to take this and now we're going to extend it. Not just using ratios and ratio tables. We're going to incorporate graphs. We're going to incorporate ratio tables and coordinate planes and points and things of that sort. So all I need you guys to do is just make sure that you focus and you stay with me, all right? So here we go. On page 157, it says at the end of the morning news segment, the local television station highlighted area pets that needed to be adopted. The station posted a specific website on the screen for viewers to find more information on the pets shown and the adoption process. The station's producer checked the website 2 hours at the end of the broadcast and saw that the website had 24 views. 1 hour after that, the website had 36 views. All right, so they give us a ratio, so we're going to take that ratio and we're going to put it on our ratio table. Yes, that's the first number that they gave us, but we also have to pay attention to whether or not that ratio can be simplified. We're finding the value. So do they give us the value or do they just give us a ratio? In this case, we have the ratio of 24 to 2, right? 2 hours after the broadcast, there were 24 views. Now, you always want to check to see if your ratio can be simplified. What's the greatest common factor between 2 and 24? So let's work it out and let's see if it can be simplified. Because sometimes they may give you the value, which is the smallest form of your fraction or your ratio, and then other times they may give you a ratio that can be simplified. So we're going to write out the factors of 24 and then the factors of 2. So the factors of 24, what times each other can give me 24? 1 is always going to work, so we're going to say 1 times 24. 24 is an even number, so 2 also works. Does 3 work? What times 3 is going to give you 24? How about 4? 4 times 6, 24. Because this doesn't end in a 5 or a 0, we know that 5 is not going to work. We already have 6 on here, so I'm not going to write it again. 7 does not work. We already have 8, so I'm not going to write it again. Those are all the factors of 24. Then I'm going to do the same thing for 2. We say, 1 times 2, and those are the only digits that work in order to create 2, right? So then we go through, we start with the largest number and see if they have that in common. 24 is the largest number. They don't have 24 in common. 12 is the next number. They don't have that in common. 8 is the next number. They don't have that in common. 6 is the next number. It's not in common. 4, not in common. 3, not in common. 2. 2 is a number that they both have in common. So I'm going to circle this 2 under the 24, and I'm going to circle the 2 under the 2. And that tells me that this can be divided by 2, which means it's equal to 1/12. So if we wanted to create a ratio table and they didn't give us the value of that particular ratio, we would find it by finding the greatest common factor between two numbers within the ratio table that's given to us, and then simplify it down to the smallest portion. All right, so this table would start with, for the first hour, that means that there were 12 views. All right, when you're looking at the ratio table, you also want to pay attention to the pattern, right? If we're looking at hours, we're going up by 1s. So the next would be 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6. If we're looking at views, we're going up by 12. We got to keep the same consistency as we go through. So if I start off with 12, then I have to increase by 12 each time. So 12 plus 12 is 24. 2 to 24, that was the original ratio that they gave us. So that goes in there, that's correct. Then it told us that 1 hour after the 2 hour period, that there were 36 views. So that means after 1 hour after 2 is 3. For every 3 hours, there were 36 views. Then we continue. Your question, you want to think about, what am I doing to the hours in order to get views? I'm taking the hours and multiplying it by 12 in order to get views. So I take 2 and multiply it by 12 in order to get 24. 3 times 12 gives you 36. So if we keep the same pattern, we say, well, what is 4 times 12? What is 5 times 12? What is 6 times 12, right? So then that gives us 4 times 12, which is 48. 5 times 12, which is 60. 6 times 12, which is 72. All right? So now we can go ahead and answer the next question, which says, what is the constant number that makes these ratios equivalent? And we've kind of already answered that because we looked at the pattern to see what are we doing to the number of hours in order to get the number of views. So for that question, you would put the number 12 in. And that question is on page 157 under exercise 2. Now it says using an equation to figure this out. Remember, what are we doing to the views in order to get the number of hours, right? So views, the letter V, remember that's a variable. You can use any letter to represent something we don't know, all right? So we're taking the views, right? In order to get the views, we're taking hours and multiplying it by 12. So we would say 12H. When you put a number and a letter right next to each other, that implies multiplication, all right? So let's flip the page and go to page 158 in your student workbook and look at exercise 3. So now it says use the table to you created in exercise 1 to identify set of ordered pairs that can be graphed. Now ordered pairs are the two numbers that you're using your X value and your Y value. So in this case, if I put the letter X up here, comma, Y, this is how you would write an ordered pair. You would have an X value, that first thing that you're representing, and then a Y value. X, your X axis on a coordinate plane goes from left to right, which is the horizontal part of your coordinate plane. Your Y value goes from top to bottom, which is your vertical part of the coordinate plane, all right? So when you put points on a coordinate plane, you have to trace left to right first, and then top to bottom. And where the two numbers meet, that's where you put a point on the graph, all right? So we're gonna write out the coordinates for us to be able to put on our graph. So in order to get the coordinates, you just take the two numbers that are right across from each other and put a comma and parentheses, all right? So here is our coordinates for the first one. 1, 12. That's your ordered pair for the first one. For the second one, your ordered pair is 2, 24. The next one is going to be 3 and 36. So 3, 36. Then we just continue throughout the table and take the two numbers that were the ratios and make it into a coordinate. Now that we have our ordered pairs, now we're going to go ahead and take those and put it onto the coordinate plane. And how this works is you always start at 0. So I'm going to take my point and start at 0 every time, right? I'm going to look at the first number. That's your X coordinate. Your X value says that the first number I have to go to is 1. So from 0, which is the origin, right, I'm going to go to the number 1. Then, once I've moved to the right, then I'm going to look at the second point and move up until I get to 12. This is going up by 4s, so I'm going 4, 8, 12. So when they meet, I'm going to put a point there, right? Then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go back to 0. I'm going to go to the x value, which is 2 in this case. I'm going to find the number 2. Then I'm going to go to the y value, which is 24. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. I'm going to trace until those 2 points meet. Then we're going to do the same thing with the rest of our numbers. So we go 0 to 3, and then from 0 up to 36, I'm going to trace the 2 until my fingers meet, and I'm going to put a point there. Then I'm going to do the same thing with the next one. From 0 to 4, then from 0 to 48, then I'm going to trace until my fingers meet, and I'm going to put a dot there. 0 to 5, 0 to 60, I'm going to trace until my fingers meet and put a dot there. Notice I'm creating a straight line, okay? Then we do the same thing, 0 to 6, 0 to 72, and then we trace until our fingers meet, and we put a dot there. Now, sometimes they would ask you to connect the dots, and this goes through the origin, so we're just gonna draw a line to connect. All right? This would be another way to display the same exact information. All 3 of these things are displaying the same exact thing. So if we look at exercise 5, which says, predict how many views the website will have after 12 hours. Use at least 2 representations. So we're going to do the tape diagram, okay? And we're used to the tape diagram, right? Because that's just the rectangles. So I know that my original ratio was 1, or the simplified form of my original ratio, because my original ratio was 2 to 24. But when we simplified it down to 1 to 12. So I'm going to draw a tape diagram representing hours to views, right? So I'm going to put 1 box to represent hours. And then we need 12 to represent views. Now they said if it represented 12, right? So we want to put 12 inside, right? So we say 12. If each box was representing 12, right? How many views would you get? So what we would do is we count up. We have 12 individual boxes. Each box is worth 12. 12 times 12 is 144. Another way we can do this is using a double number line. The double number line is going to do the same thing to compare the 2. We're going to draw, it's going to look like this. 12 hash marks because we're representing 12 hours. On the outside, this first line at the top is representing hours. This second line at the bottom is representing views. So up here, we want to know how much for 12. So we count by ones here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? We know that for every 1 hour, there were 12 views. So then here at the bottom, we're going to count by 12. So we go 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, 72, 90, 84, 96, 108, 120, 132, and then 144. So how much for 12 hours? 12 hours is represented by 144. Now you guys will have an opportunity to go ahead and practice some problems on your own.